The days after the awakening were filled with fear, confusion, and silence. Across the Galactic Council's networks, every channel broadcast the same forbidden image. The Verilian princess standing beside a human medic, both surrounded by blinding light, her once blue skin now shimmering with golden veins of energy. Scientists from 50 species analyzed the footage frame by frame, searching for a logical explanation. None could find one. The council declared the footage a data fabrication, but whispers spread faster than truth ever could. Traders spoke of alien fleets shutting down mid-flight, their reactors pulsing to the same rhythm as the human heartbeat heard in the background of the broadcast. Priests across the Orion sectors began preaching that the seed had returned, and others claimed humanity had merged with something divine. On Earth, the streets of every city glowed under the lights of thousands of screens replaying the event. Some saw it as a miracle of unity, others as the beginning of humanity's doom. Aaron Cole, the medic who had given his blood, was kept under heavy watch inside a Terran orbital station above Mars. Every test they ran on him came back with readings that defied physics. His cells divided with impossible precision, his neural patterns fluctuated between human and something alien. He could feel her still, the princess, her thoughts bleeding into his, her memories of crystal palaces, silver oceans, and ancient songs that carried voices not meant for mortal ears. Every time he slept, he saw her standing on the surface of a shattered world, calling his name across the void. The scientists told him it was hallucination, a side effect of trauma, but deep down he knew the connection was real. He wasn't just dreaming, he was listening. On the Verilian homeworld, chaos erupted. Their royal houses accused each other of treason for allowing a human to pollute royal blood. Armies moved across borders, ships armed, and the entire civilization stood on the edge of civil war. Yet the princess, hidden within a secret sanctuary under the protection of a few loyal followers, refused to fight. She spent her days in meditation, her body glowing softly like a living star, her eyes distant, her voice carrying both human emotion and alien tone. "He is my echo," she told them, "and through him, the universe will choose." Her followers didn't understand, but they obeyed. She began drawing strange patterns on the walls, ancient geometric shapes that pulsed with light whenever she whispered Aaron's name. Unknown to anyone, each pattern transmitted a faint signal into deep space. Far beyond known systems, among the relics of dead civilizations, something old began to stir. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council held emergency meetings in their colossal ring station orbiting Alpha Meridian. Delegates from every major empire gathered under shimmering light domes, their voices rising in fear and accusation. The Skarn warlords demanded humanity's immediate containment. The Volthans, insectoid scholars of genetics, warned that the hybridization could unravel the known biospectrum. The Ketheri prophets claimed this was destiny, a cycle reborn every billion years. And when the human ambassador tried to speak, the chamber erupted in chaos. "You unleashed this," shouted the Skarn High Commander. "Your blood corrupted the royal lines. You have awakened the architects." But the human ambassador stood calm, his voice steady. "We saved a life," he said. "If that act brings your nightmares to life, then maybe your nightmares were already waiting." The council voted to sanction Earth. Within hours, trade routes were blocked, human colonies cut off, and Terran research stations seized. Back on Earth, Terran Command realized the isolation meant only one thing, a prelude to war. Every orbital defense satellite was activated. The Eclipse Fleet, humanity's secret deep space armada, went on alert for the first time in decades. Yet even as admirals prepared for battle, the real war was happening inside two minds linked across light years. Aaron began hearing fragments of alien languages, equations that mapped not space, but life itself. His blood reacted to her emotions. When she wept, his pulse burned like fire. When she dreamed, stars flickered in sync with their breathing. Terran scientists tried to break the connection by isolating him in a null field, but it only intensified. Every monitor in the room flickered to life, displaying the same message: "We are coming." The words repeated in hundreds of alien dialects, some dead for eons. The Council intercepted the same signal spreading through their comm networks, infecting systems that weren't even connected to human technology. In a desperate attempt to contain the unknown, the Council deployed a fleet toward Virilia, claiming they were there to secure the princess. But everyone knew what that meant. Eradication. Terran intelligence picked up the movement before it was announced publicly. Within hours, a small black ship left Mars orbit under classified orders. Project Requiem. On board were elite operatives and Aaron Cole himself, despite his unstable condition. His orders were simple. Find the princess before the Council did. He felt her calling, pulling him through the dark like gravity itself. As the ship jumped through the void, Aaron could see flashes of her vision. Warships burning, worlds cracking open, and beyond them, colossal figures made of light and metal watching from the edge of reality. When he finally reached Virilia, the Council fleet had already arrived. Cities burned under plasma bombardment. The skies screamed with the trails of falling ships. In the chaos, Aaron's shuttle slipped through the blockade, guided by the psychic link he shared with her. He found her inside the old temple at the heart of the crystal wastes. She stood barefoot among shattered glass pillars, her skin glowing brighter than the twin moons above. When she saw him, she whispered his name, and the ground itself trembled. The fusion of their bloodlines reacted violently. Energy arcs spread across the ruins, machines long dormant awakening from the dust. The princess fell into his arms, whispering, "They fear us because they remember." And as the Council ships descended for the kill, something ancient beneath the planet began to move. Vast shapes, buried for millennia, rose from the sand. Machines older than any race alive, answering a call only her blood and his could summon. Terran Command picked up the readings from millions of kilometers away, gravitational waves, quantum discharges, energy signatures matching no known physics. Earth's skies lit up with auroras as if the galaxy itself was trembling. The Council's fleet above Virilia tried to retreat, but their ships froze mid-flight, their power cores sinking to the same frequency resonating from the planet. And at the center of it all stood the human and the princess, glowing like twin stars. In that moment, the line between human and alien vanished. There was only one pulse, one mind, one awakening. The machines rose higher, their forms blotting out the sun. And the universe watched, waiting to see whether this union would save existence, or end it forever. The moment the ancient machines rose from the sands of Virilia, the galaxy changed forever. Each towering construct, forged of living metal and forgotten purpose, stood kilometers tall, their eyes like molten suns, their forms older than recorded time. The ground quaked beneath their weight, and across the Council's long-range sensors, entire constellations seemed to pulse in rhythm with their awakening. Aaron Cole stood frozen, the princess in his arms, her body trembling with light, so intense it burned the air around her. She whispered one word, "Architects." That name hadn't been spoken in over 1,000,000 years, not since the myths of the first builders who shaped galaxies before vanishing into the void. Every alien scholar who had ever studied the Forbidden Archives had dismissed them as legends, stories meant to explain the origins of creation itself. But here, before their eyes, legend had become truth. The first machine moved, its head tilted toward the sky, its voice echoing across the entire planet in a frequency that bypassed sound, resonating straight through the bones of every living being. Its language was untranslatable, yet every creature, human or alien, understood it instinctively. "The bloodline awakens," it said. Ships in orbit lost power. Council admirals screamed orders, but their fleets drifted powerless, locked in the gravitational field now pulsing from Virilia's core. In the depths of space, Terran Command received the transmission and stared in disbelief as their screens filled with coordinates spreading far beyond known systems. The pattern formed something no one expected, a map of all life-bearing worlds, flickering as if the machines were cataloging them one by one. Humanity had never seen power like this. Even the great empires that once ruled the stars were dust compared to this awakening. Aaron clutched the princess tighter, his mind racing between fear and awe. "What did we do?" he whispered. The princess looked up at him, her voice fragile yet certain. "We reminded the universe what it forgot, that life has a memory." Her pulse matched his, and suddenly his vision exploded with light. He saw flashes, civilizations rising, falling, endless wars, worlds burned by greed. He saw the architects standing over the chaos, disappointed in their creations. Then silence. They had vanished to sleep until something worthy reawakened them. Human blood, adaptive, resilient, born from struggle, had triggered that code. It was never an accident. It was destiny written in the atoms of life itself. The Council's flagship, Elysian Dominion, broke the silence first. Admiral Corrin, a reptilian warlord, ordered his ship's main weapon to fire on the planet, screaming that the hybrids were abominations. But the moment the energy beam reached the atmosphere, it split apart into threads of light that spiraled back toward the ship. The beam turned inward, consuming its own vessel in a silent implosion. Millions watched the feed broadcast across the Council's emergency network. Panic spread through every known civilization. Armies disobeyed commands, colonies declared independence, and old alliances fractured overnight. The words "Architects Return" became the most feared phrase in the galaxy. On Earth, leaders gathered inside the Terran Council chamber beneath the North American Defense Complex. The walls vibrated faintly as the resonance spread even across the void of space. President Hara, a stoic woman who had seen 3 wars and countless betrayals, stared at the glowing holograms of the awakened machines. "We've become the epicenter of something far older than politics," she said quietly. "If the galaxy fears us now, then we must decide. Do we lead them, or do we survive them?" Around her, admirals argued for preemptive strikes. Scientists pleaded for communication, and philosophers whispered that humanity had just inherited godhood. But Aaron's last transmission silenced them all. His voice came through faint and strained, but calm. "They're not gods. They're waiting for an answer." Back on Virilia, Aaron and the princess found themselves surrounded by blinding light as the machines knelt before them. Their metallic hands pressed into the sand, each movement sending shockwaves through the crust of the planet. One of them lowered its head, and from its core came a projection. A galaxy spinning in miniature, threads of energy connecting worlds like veins. "We see the fracture," it said. "You are the remedy." Aaron shook his head, terrified. "I'm just a man. I don't understand any of this." The princess touched his cheek, her glowing eyes soft. "You do," she whispered. "Humanity always fixes what the universe breaks. That's why they called us dangerous." But even as the machines spoke, something darker stirred in the void beyond the outer colonies. Not all ancient creations had slept peacefully. The awakening of the architects had reactivated their opposites, the null. Long ago, when the architects built life, the null sought to unmake it, consuming energy and matter until only silence remained. They had been sealed beyond the galactic rim, locked in black space beyond the reach of time. Now, as the hybrid bloodline pulsed through the stars, the seal cracked. Council listening stations on the edge of the Perseus arm vanished without a trace. Then came the signal, a cold frequency that whispered through every ship's comm systems. "Silence returns." Aaron collapsed as the vision struck him again. He saw black clouds spreading through the void, devouring light. He saw planets crumble, suns dim. "They're coming," he gasped. The princess's expression hardened. "Then we must become what they made us to be." She turned toward the machines, her voice rising into a command that shook the air. "Reforge the Guardians. The balance must hold." The machines responded in unison, their bodies splitting into streams of light that flowed into the sky. Orbiting Council ships were blasted aside as beams of pure energy pierced the clouds, forming new vessels. Colossal starships groaned from the fusion of technology and living metal. Humanity's fleet, watching from far across the system, detected hundreds of new objects forming above Virilia. Their shapes were unlike anything built before, smooth, luminous, pulsing like hearts. The hybrid fleet had been born. When Aaron awoke again, he was aboard one of the new ships. The walls pulsed with light, alive like breathing flesh. He could feel the engines not through sound, but through his heartbeat. The princess stood beside him, her body now entirely luminous, her features no longer wholly alien or human. "Where are we?" he asked weakly. She smiled, sorrow in her eyes. "Between what was and what will be, the architect's realm reborn in our image." Outside the window, the galaxy burned with color. Hundreds of stars aligned, their energy flowing through invisible pathways leading straight toward the null's prison. Humanity's sensors picked it up seconds later, a breach opening beyond known space, wider than any star, pulling energy from every direction. The end of the galaxy had begun. Back on Earth, panic turned into purpose. The Terran Council declared an emergency unification under Operation Dawnshield. Every human ship, station, and outpost joined the call. Even old enemies among alien allies defected to the Terran banner, realizing the Council had lost control. As fleets gathered above Mars, a transmission came directly from Aaron's ship. His voice, steady and filled with strange echoes, addressed every sentient being. "The Null is awake. The architects cannot stop them alone. But humanity can. We were born from struggle, forged in chaos, and tempered by hope. We are not gods, not conquerors, not saviors. We are the will to survive." The transmission spread like wildfire across the stars. Billions watched, billions trembled, and for the first time, countless species looked to humanity not as a threat, but as their last chance. And far beyond them, at the edge of the void, the darkness stirred and whispered in return. "Then let us see what your blood remembers." The breach beyond the galactic rim widened until it was no longer a rift, but a wound in reality itself. Light bent and vanished into it. Stars dimmed in its presence, and every scanner across the galaxy reported the same impossible reading: negative energy radiating outward. Where once there had been silence, now there was a whisper, a vibration crawling through the void like a living shadow. The Null had returned. Entire moons drifted from orbit as gravity warped, and in their place came shapes made of darkness so dense that even photons bent around them. They were not ships. They were hunger given form. No hull, no engines, no sound. Just colossal silhouettes moving with the patience of predators. Every world that sent probes into that black ocean went silent within seconds. On Virilia, the hybrid fleet stood ready, their living ships shimmering in pale gold as the architect machines completed the final synchronization. Each vessel responded not to controls, but to the minds of its pilots. The princess, now the living conduit of the architect's signal, commanded them not with words, but with will. Aaron stood beside her at the central core of the flagship, Erethian, his veins glowing faintly in sync with hers. When he looked through the observation dome, he didn't see the familiar starfields anymore. He saw the flows of life, the hidden patterns that bound all creation together, and the great void beyond, eating away at the edges like ink in water. He realized that what they were facing wasn't an enemy to defeat, but a concept to resist, entropy itself. The Galactic Council had fallen into chaos. Entire species had abandoned the capital station, retreating into their home systems. The Skarn Empire declared a purge of faith, destroying their own colonies to prevent infection from spreading. The Volthans tried to contain the energy waves using quantum barriers, but their technology disintegrated upon contact. The Council's communications grid collapsed as the Null's interference spread through the network. What had been a united government of thousands of worlds dissolved overnight. The galaxy had gone silent, except for one transmission that kept repeating through every surviving channel: Origin, Sol System. To all life, stand together or cease together. Humanity will hold the line. The voice was the Terran president's, strong and steady, echoing across a million worlds. Earth had become the beacon. All remaining fleets, human and alien alike, rallied under the Terran banner. Ships filled the orbit of Mars and Luna, entire armadas forming a shimmering barrier across the solar system. From the outer colonies came miners, traders, and even pirates, their vessels repurposed into defense platforms. Humanity had always been underestimated, but now, under the shadow of extinction, their unity burned brighter than any star. In orbit above Jupiter, The Soul Reborn activated the Terran Command Nexus, an ancient relic reverse-engineered from the ruins of the First Contact War centuries ago. The massive ring pulsed with energy as new signals came online, hybrid channels linking directly to Aaron and the Princess through the Architect resonance. Humanity was no longer fighting alone. The hybrid fleet's consciousness was connected to every human heart that dared to hope. Aaron felt their minds, the fear, the courage, the desperate determination of billions. It was overwhelming, yet empowering. The Princess stood beside him, her expression unreadable, her eyes no longer reflecting stars but glowing with pure white light. "They are afraid," she said softly. "But fear is the spark that drives creation." She extended her hand, and the Architect fleets above Virelia began to move. Thousands of living ships aligned into formation, each one pulsing with bioluminescent veins of gold and blue. Together, they formed a lattice, a pattern that mirrored the DNA helix itself, a symbol of life unbroken. The Erethian led the charge, its engines humming like a living heart as it entered warp toward the rim. The journey through the void was beyond comprehension. The stars stretched into streaks of color, and then into nothing at all. Space itself twisted into abstract geometries, the laws of physics bending to the will of ancient design. Aaron's mind began to fracture under the strain, but the Princess steadied him, her voice a melody that cut through madness. "Do not look with your eyes," she whispered. "Feel what the architects built before time had meaning." And then, the breach appeared before them, an abyss larger than galaxies, surrounded by ghostly remnants of dead civilizations floating like bones in a cosmic graveyard. The Null were there, waiting. They emerged like a tide of black flame, shapes of shadow that absorbed light, energy, and even thought. The first wave hit the hybrid fleet with force beyond measure. Entire ships were consumed, their matter erased from existence. Aaron's ship shuddered, the hull screaming as fragments of darkness clawed against the light shields. But instead of fear, he felt something else. Anger, not his own, but hers. The Princess stepped forward, raising her hands as arcs of golden light surged from her body, spreading across the fleet. The hybrid ships responded instantly, their hulls flaring brighter, regenerating as if alive. When the next wave of Null came, they didn't fade, they sang. The sound wasn't music, but resonance. Pure frequency tuned to the core of existence. The Null halted for the first time in eons. Aaron's mind flooded with images from the Architect's memories, the creation of galaxies, the birth of stars, and the first war that tore everything apart. The Null had once been part of them, balanced to creation, guardians of endings. But they had become corrupted, obsessed with silence, with unmaking. Now, they recognized the hybrid signal not as opposition, but as correction. The Erethian sensors detected strange fluctuations in the Null's formations. Some began to break apart, retreating toward the edges of the breach, as if confused. But the largest among them, the one they called the Maw, advanced without hesitation. It dwarfed moons, a swirling vortex of antimatter wrapped in layers of impossible geometry. Every pulse from its core disintegrated ships instantly. Even the Architect machines began to crumble. In that moment, Aaron and the Princess realized words wouldn't win this battle. It required a sacrifice. "If the blood awakened creation," she said quietly, "then only by its return can the cycle close." Aaron shook his head, his voice breaking. "No, you'll die. I can't let you." She smiled sadly. "You already did when you gave me your blood. Now I give it back." Before he could stop her, she pressed her palm against his chest. Their light merged, brighter than a sun. The machines roared as if in mourning, the fleet pausing mid-battle as energy rippled outward. The Null hesitated, sensing something ancient stirring within the light. From every inhabited world across the galaxy, people looked to the skies and saw it. A beam of gold and blue stretching across the cosmos, brighter than any star, piercing the heart of the breach. For a moment, the darkness screamed. The energy from the hybrid fusion tore through the Null like sunlight through mist, and one by one, their forms shattered. The Maw twisted, its geometry unraveling into fragments of void. The rift began to close, But inside the Erethean, Erin held her lifeless body, tears of light falling across her skin. Her glow faded, her voice echoing faintly in his mind. You are the bridge now, live, for both of us. As the breach sealed and the last of the null vanished, silence returned to the stars. Not the cold silence of death, but the calm after creation's storm. The architect ships powered down, sinking into orbit above Virilia like monuments. The galaxy was saved, but the cost had been unimaginable. The Galactic Council, what little remained, issued a statement acknowledging humanity's role in ending the extinction event. But their fear lingered. They saw in Erin not just a hero, but a reminder that human blood could awaken gods. And while peace returned for now, whispers spread that something still stirred in the void, that the hybrid's sacrifice had not destroyed the null entirely, only changed them. And somewhere, in the depths of Erin's mind, a familiar voice whispered once more, "This isn't the end, my love. This is evolution." The galaxy's silence after the war felt like the breath before dawn. Too still, too heavy, as if the universe itself was uncertain whether to rest or prepare for what came next. The stars once filled with fleets and fire now burned quietly, their light reflecting off the drifting ruins of war. On the fractured surface of Virilia, the architect titans stood motionless, half buried in the sand, their golden eyes dimmed but not dead. Their purpose was fulfilled, or so everyone believed. Humanity's fleets limped home, their hulls scorched and their crews hollow-eyed. The Council worlds, what was left of them, sent messages of gratitude, each one dripping with fear disguised as respect. To them, the Terrans were no longer merely human. They were something else now, something born of blood, sacrifice, and creation itself. But inside the Terran flagship Soul Reborn, Erin Cole sat alone in the observation chamber, watching the distant light of the sealed breach shimmer faintly at the edge of reality. The princess's last words still echoed inside him, soft, tender, eternal. You are the bridge now. The scientists called his survival impossible. His body should have vaporized when he and the princess merged, but instead he emerged untouched, at least on the outside. Within, his blood carried threads of living energy that pulsed like microscopic stars. His eyes glowed faintly in darkness, and his thoughts no longer belonged entirely to him. He could hear whispers, fragments of voices from dying worlds, the hum of matter itself, the faint heartbeat of the galaxy. The doctors wanted to keep him under isolation at Luna Command, but the Terran president overruled them. He ended the war, she said. We don't cage our savior. Yet Erin didn't feel like one. He felt hollow. Every dream carried her presence. Her laughter, her sorrow, her touch fading in his arms. But there was something more. A pattern hidden in the rhythm of those dreams. Every night, when he closed his eyes, he saw the same symbol appear. A spiral of light expanding and contracting, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. It was the same pattern the architects once used to mark the beginning of a new cycle. Back on Earth, humanity had changed. For centuries, the species that once struggled for survival now stood at the center of the galactic map. The Terran flag flew over stations once controlled by alien empires. Colonies that had long feared human independence now begged to join the Terran alliance. To the Council remnants, humanity was both salvation and warning. The alien species who had mocked and restricted them for centuries now sent envoys filled with trembling respect. The Council's archives were opened for the first time, revealing thousands of years of hidden history. Humanity learned the truth. The architects had not simply vanished. They had planted seeds of their legacy in multiple species, hoping one day a hybrid would bridge creation and silence. It had taken billions of years, but the prophecy had fulfilled itself through a single act of compassion. A man's blood given to save a dying princess. Erin was summoned to the new Galactic Assembly, now held in orbit above Titan. Representatives from every surviving world gathered there under banners of unity. When he entered the chamber, the entire hall went silent. Some bowed. Others looked away. To them, he wasn't just a soldier. He was the living proof that creation itself had chosen humanity. But Erin hated the reverence. Don't call me savior, he told them. Call me survivor. When asked about the future of the hybrid power, he simply said, "It isn't mine to use. It's ours to protect." Yet as he spoke, sensors across the station picked up a faint pulse coming from the sealed breach. It was weak but rhythmic, like a heartbeat returning after death. The assembly froze as holographic displays flickered, waveforms matching human neural activity. "Impossible," whispered the Virelian delegate. The breach was closed. Aaron's eyes narrowed, the glow in his pupils intensifying. "No," he said softly. "It's waking up." Across the galaxy, strange phenomena began to appear. On dead worlds, flora that hadn't grown in millennia suddenly sprouted under skies of broken moons. Derelict ships once thought lifeless reactivated, their engines humming faintly with architect energy. Even the dust between the stars began to glow faintly, as if charged by invisible current. Some called it resurrection. Others called it contamination. The Council's remaining fleets grew restless, fearful that the hybrid energy was spreading uncontrollably. They sent covert missions to study human space, though everyone knew it meant sabotage. One of those missions vanished near the Kuiper line, where sensors recorded a massive energy surge before going dark. When Terran scouts investigated, they found something impossible. A single ship floating intact, its hull transformed into the same golden living metal that once covered architect vessels. The crew inside were alive, but their eyes glowed like Aaron's. As days passed, more humans began showing signs of change. Soldiers who had fought near the breach, engineers who worked on architect relics, even civilians who had never left Earth. All of them experienced brief flashes of shared memory, visions of light and shadow, as if connected by an unseen thread. Terran scientists called it resonant Bloom syndrome, believing it to be leftover radiation. But Aaron knew better. It wasn't sickness, it was inheritance. The hybrid bloodline was spreading, awakening dormant architect code in humanity's DNA. The very thing the princess sacrificed herself to protect was now becoming the next step of evolution. Yet with every awakening, Aaron could feel her voice stronger, echoing through his mind, clearer than ever before. "You can't stop what was meant to begin," she whispered. "You can only guide it." Terran command grew divided. Some saw the transformation as the next phase of humanity's destiny, to ascend and become the new guardians of creation. Others saw it as a curse that would destroy what made them human. The president called Aaron to her private chamber overlooking the blue curve of Earth. "Tell me the truth," she said quietly. "Will we survive this?" Aaron looked out at the planet that had birthed him, at the oceans shimmering under sunlight, at the cities glowing with life. "That depends on what we decide to be," he replied. "Gods or caretakers?" Outside, thunder rolled across the Atlantic, though there were no clouds. The planet itself seemed to tremble, as if listening. Then, one night, the stars changed. Astronomers across 1,000 systems reported that a cluster near the galactic core had rearranged itself, shifting into the spiral symbol Aaron saw in his dreams. The light pulsed faintly, synchronized with human heartbeats across the galaxy. And from deep within the sealed breach, a transmission emerged, not of destruction, but of a voice. Her voice, the princess, weak, faint, but unmistakable. "Aaron, it's not over. They're not gone." The null evolved too. The message repeated 3 times before the signal vanished. The council went into panic, but Aaron smiled faintly. She was alive somewhere beyond the veil. And so, humanity began its greatest journey yet, not of war, but of rediscovery. Under Aaron's guidance, fleets set out toward the edge of creation, not to conquer, but to understand. He knew what awaited them would test everything they were, for the universe had awakened a second time, and its silence had become a whisper again. As he watched the Terran fleet ascend into the endless dark, his heart beat in harmony with the stars. For the first time since the war, he spoke aloud to the void, his voice calm, filled with both sorrow and hope. "If the galaxy still fears us," he said softly, "let it. But this time we'll teach it why humanity was never meant to be feared. We were meant to be remembered." Years passed, Yet the universe never truly returned to peace. The scars of the war remained like faint cracks across the skin of the galaxy, silent, glowing reminders of what had been unleashed. For a time, it seemed as though the light of humanity had restored balance, but as the decades moved forward, that same light began to spread in ways no one could predict. Across colonies, outposts, and abandoned worlds, people began to change. Their dreams synchronized, their hearts beating in unison during certain celestial alignments. Ships powered by conventional reactors began generating excess energy without explanation. Entire planets started humming faintly, their electromagnetic fields fluctuating in harmony with an invisible frequency that matched Aaron Cole's pulse. Humanity, without realizing it, had become the core of a living network, the architect resonance reborn through human blood. Aaron no longer aged. His reflection remained the same as it had the day of the breach's closure, eyes burning with soft gold, his veins faintly illuminated beneath pale skin. Some called him immortal, others cursed. He spent his years drifting between the stars aboard the Erethian, now the flagship of the new Terran Alliance. The once pure vessel had become a hybrid living monument, half ship, half being. Its heart still carrying the echo of the princess's essence. Her voice still whispered to him in moments of silence. "You must teach them, Aaron. They will forget what we paid to build this peace." And he tried. He guided new generations of Terrans through diplomacy, exploration, and restraint. He forbade the use of hybrid technology for weapons, insisting it belonged only to the preservation of life. But as history had shown countless times before, power, no matter how divine, always called to those who hungered for control. The first rebellion began quietly. A faction of Terran admirals broke away, claiming that humanity's new destiny was not to protect but to ascend. They called themselves the Luminar Ascendancy. To them, the architect gift was a crown, not a burden. "The galaxy fears us because they know we are meant to rule," said their leader, Admiral Riker Sloan, once one of Aaron's most trusted protégés. He believed the princess's sacrifice had not been for peace, but for dominance, a return of order through strength. His fleet left Mars' orbit and vanished into deep space, taking with it hundreds of hybrid cores stolen from Virelia. For the first time since the breach, humanity faced the threat of its own reflection, those who worshipped the power of creation without understanding the price it carried. Aaron pursued them across star systems, through the shattered corridors of old architect ruins, his heart growing heavier with each confrontation. When the Ascendancy began experimenting with awakening dormant architect machines, he knew what was coming. The equilibrium between creation and silence had been disturbed once again. The machines they reactivated no longer obeyed. Something else had touched them. A shadow hidden within the code. When Aaron finally found Sloane's fleet near the edge of the Perseus Rim, he saw the impossible. The ships had fused with the machines completely, their hulls now resembling living bone, their captains speaking in tones that were not their own. The Null had returned, not as predators this time, but as parasites feeding on the light of humanity's evolution. The battle that followed was unlike anything seen before. It wasn't fought with weapons alone, it was fought through reality itself. Every energy discharge, every psychic wave bent space and time into ripples that shattered planets. The Erethian led the charge, its golden hull shining like a sun in darkness. Aaron's voice echoed through the fleet, calm and resolute. "Remember why she died. Not for domination, for life." The hybrid ships responded, their cores glowing as one, forming a massive resonance field that contained the Null influence. Yet Sloane's voice, distorted and hollow, came through the comms. "You think you carry her light, Cole? You carry her prison. The architects built us to die, but I will break their cycle." His fleet unleashed a wave of anti-resonant energy, tearing through space itself. Aaron closed his eyes and reached deep into the bond he once shared with the princess. "Help me," he whispered, and the void answered. The Erethian's lights flared brighter, the ship trembling as a familiar warmth filled the air. Her voice spoke again, no longer faint but alive, resonating through every human heart. "The cycle doesn't need breaking. It needs healing." The fleet's resonance shifted, harmonizing perfectly with the frequencies of the living universe. Sloane's ships began to crumble as the corruption feeding them evaporated. The battle ended with one final burst of light that stretched across 1,000 systems. When it faded, only silence remained. The ascendancy was gone. The null infection dispersed, and Aaron floated amid the wreckage, exhausted but alive. Afterward, the galaxy entered what historians would call the Quiet Age. Terran influence spread not through conquest, but through stewardship. Humanity became the custodians of lost worlds, rebuilding civilizations the Council had long abandoned. The hybrid resonance, once feared, became a unifying language across species. It was said that when two beings, human or alien, stood together in peace, the stars above them glowed just a little brighter. Yet even in this peace, Aaron knew the truth. The null could never be truly destroyed. They existed as the reflection of life, the inevitable counterpart to creation. The princess's voice, now faint once more, reminded him gently, "Every light must cast a shadow, Aaron. It's not our task to end it, only to keep it from consuming all." Centuries passed. Humanity transcended the need for flesh, yet kept the memory of it sacred. Their ships became living sanctuaries, their cities floating gardens of light. The galaxy no longer feared them, it worshipped them. But Aaron Cole, unchanged and eternal, remained distant from that reverence. He often stood alone at the edge of the Milky Way, staring into the faint scar of the sealed breach, feeling its pulse beneath the silence. One night, after 1,000 years of quiet, he heard it again, a soft voice calling from beyond. "Aaron, come home." The stars rippled. The spiral symbol appeared once more, stretching across the night like a golden scar. He smiled faintly, his heart both heavy and at peace. "You never left, did you?" he whispered. The Erethian awakened, its engines humming like a heartbeat. The ship turned toward the dark edge of creation. As it crossed the threshold, its light merged with the horizon of stars, and then it was gone. One man, one promise, carrying the fire of humanity into the unknown. And though the galaxy would never see him again, his legacy remained in every world that breathed, every child that looked to the night sky, and every whisper carried through the silence of space. Humanity's story had begun with a single act of compassion, a drop of blood given freely. It ended not with war, but with understanding. For in the infinite tapestry of the universe, the truth endured. Humanity was not the end of creation. It was its heartbeat. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to SciFi Tales for more epic HFY tales of humanity's courage among the stars.